Go. If you open your Bibles to John, I think that's Job. That's like Job chapter 36. We're going to look at the finality of Elihu's speech to Job. And just as a reminder, Job, of course, has been struck by Satan. Job does not know that, but he has been struck deeply, physically and emotionally by Satan, and one of the worst trials that you could ever imagine. In fact, I don't know that I've ever known anybody that's gone through exactly the sequence of trial that he's gone through, with especially losing 10 children, all of his children in one day. And that's unimaginable just in itself. Losing even the support of his wife, losing everything he owned, and then finally, if that wasn't enough, Satan striking him with boils from the top of his head to the bottom of his feet until he can't hardly eat or drink or sleep. And after who knows how many months, he says, I can see the bones sticking out of my rib cage. My bones are sticking out all over, and God won't let him die. So it's really something. There's only one person that you could think of that he would foreshadow in such agony, and that would be Jesus. And what a lesson that he gives us. So there's been 3 friends who have berated him and said, you're obviously a great sinner, and you just won't admit it. And if you admit it, everything would be fine. And Job knows he's not a great sinner, and so he won't admit it. But on Job's side of the coin is Job cannot figure out God. He doesn't understand why God is doing this, and he's made a number of demands that God give him an audience and let him have a conversation with him, and hopefully straighten God out. Is really the implication in especially chapter 9, chapter 23, you seeing this kind of thing coming from Job. So finally there's a young friend, Elihu, at the very end, who's been listening to all this and knows that the friends are wrong, and knows also that Job is wrong, and so he gives this final speech from chapter 32 through chapter 37, indicating where Job has missed it, but also trying to help Job. And Elihu's speech, as it comes to this close in chapter 36 and 37, and especially midway through 36 and through 37, is some of the most beautiful things ever written about God. And every time I read it, I start crying, and I told myself today, don't cry when you read it today. It is the most moving thing that I think I've ever read in Scripture, and I think you'll see the point as we get to it. So first off, and we'll do a little discussion here, especially on 36, and see what you think about this. But first off, just notice this end of chapter 35, verse 12 through 16, as Elihu comes to this final conclusion in his speech. And here are the things he says to Job. There they cry out, talking about those who have going through oppressions, but he does not answer because of the pride of evil men. Surely God does not hear an empty cry, nor does the Almighty regard it. How much less when you say that you do not see him, that the case is before him and you're waiting for him. Just imagine those words. I've cried out to him, I've put my case before him, and he won't answer more. I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. Where are you, God? You feel that, and I really felt like it was hard to grasp where Job sometimes was going wrong, but Elihu puts his finger on it right here. You've challenged God and you've said, I'm waiting, where are you? That is a little bit too much like a genie in a bottle type of answer. Why aren't you doing something? And so Elihu really hits that. Verse 15, and now because his anger does not punish, and he does not take much notice of transgression. In other words, God is so good that he didn't whack you for this, that he didn't just really do something to you. But he says, verse 16, Job opens his mouth in empty talk. He multiplies his words without knowledge. Elihu continued, 36:1, bear with me a little and I will show you, for I have something to say on God's behalf. Okay, so again, Elihu interrupts part of his speech at the end of this chapter division and basically gives Job an opportunity again. Bear with me. In other versions, it would indicate, I'm giving you a chance. If you need to talk right now, I'm listening. And Job again is silent. So Job's been silent. This would be the maybe third time that Elihu has taken a break and Job is still silent and does not answer. So what's that tell you? Job's going, okay, I'm listening. Finally, somebody is giving me something that I need. And I think that's very, very impressive. And one other thing to remember, Elihu's the only one in this book that's not rebuked. Everybody's rebuked, but not Elihu. So that's impressive as well, and I think lends to us paying careful attention to Elihu. All right, so we're going to look at verses 1 through 4, and I'm let's put some questions out here as we read these verses. Tell me what you can see is Elihu's primary concern for this part of his speech. So he says, bear with me, verse 2, a little, and I will show you, for I have something to say on God's behalf. I will get my knowledge from afar and ascribe righteousness to my Maker. For truly my words are not false. One who is perfect in knowledge is before you. Okay, so a little introduction there about what he wants to do. What is his seem to be his primary concern he wants Job to get out of his speech? Okay, so for one thing, he is, and he said this a number of times, I've got wisdom to share with you that is beyond what has been uttered before, and he does believe this wisdom is founded in God. Now, there's a debate by commentators as whether he thinks he's inspired. I don't think he thinks that. I don't think there's anything with that, but he does believe that he has gotten the wisdom from afar. In other words, something beyond what most human beings have understood about God. He has this knowledge and he wants to share that. All right? So good. What else?
And that he wants Job to know that God is his maker and he knows all.
Okay, good. So this is going to be very important. Notice how he says this in verse 2. I'm doing this on God's behalf. So he wants to justify God. Neither the friends justified God, nor has Job justified God. Job is constantly questioning what God is doing. And he says, I'm going to speak on God's behalf. I'm going to speak in order to justify him and present to you something that you need to know about God that you failed in, is really the idea. So that's his primary concern. And that's interesting. His primary concern isn't like the friends, Job, you deserve this, da-da-da-da-da. His primary concern is God himself. None of you have spoken well about God. None of you have. And I want to correct that. So that's a pretty cool thing. I want God to be set forth that is right. All right? When he says by perfect in knowledge, by the way, in verse 4, it just indicates his knowledge is complete. He's not saying, as usually in the Bible, he's not using the word perfect in the sense of, I have perfect knowledge and understanding of everything about God, just ask me and I'd tell you. He's going to later say he doesn't. So that's not what he's saying. He's saying, concerning this, I've got knowledge that others do not have, and I've got complete knowledge, and I want to share that with you. So that's the idea. Okay, questions, comments so far? How we doing? All right, cool. Let's go to the next section here, looking at 5 through 7. So here is where you're going to see Job, Elihu is going to proclaim God's power. Job has often proclaimed God's power. But I want you to figure out what he's saying here. Verse 5. For behold, God is mighty and does not despise any. He is mighty in strength of understanding. He does not keep the wicked alive, but gives the afflicted their right. He does not withdraw his eyes from the righteous, but with kings on the throne he sets them forever, and they are exalted. All right, as I mentioned on the screen here, Job mentioned many times the might and power of God. How does Elihu correct Job or add to what Job should have known when it comes to God's power? Yes, Mara.
9:23 it says, this is Job speaking. When disaster brings sudden death, he mocks the calamity of the innocent. So Elihu here is correctly that God does not despise him.
Yeah, God, as Mara read in chapter 9, he said, Job said, he just mocks the calamity of the innocent. Whoa, time out. Are you kidding me? Is that the God we're serving and worshiping? No. And so what he corrects him. Notice this, mighty in he's powerful. Yes, he's mighty, but he's mighty in understanding. And I believe what he's saying there, he's mighty in compassion and understanding what his people are going through. In fact, verse 7, what does he not do? He never withdraws his eyes from the righteous. Whoa, that's beautiful. That should always tell us when you are in agony and pain of what you're going through, God is not withdrawing his eyes from you. God is mighty in understanding and care for you. Yes, he does judge the wicked, but he gives the afflicted their right. What did he just admit in verse 6? He gives the afflicted their right. What did he just admit that the friends would not admit? The righteous suffer. Yeah, that's right. The righteous suffer. And that's what the friend said. The friend said, no, the righteous don't suffer. If you were righteous, you wouldn't suffer. You know, and of course Job argued, why am I suffering? I'm righteous. And so here Elihu admits, sure, the righteous do suffer. The righteous are afflicted, but God will give them their right. You do not need to think God's on vacation here or not understanding what you're going through. You are shortchanging God. Wonderful, wonderful words that are so good there. So then he goes on, and we'll notice verses 8 through 14. What you want to see here is what is God doing for the righteous in the times of trial. So see if you can figure this out as we read this. He goes on in verse 8, and if they are bound in chains, that chains is to be the righteous, and caught in the cords of affliction, then he declares to them their work and their transgressions, that they are behaving arrogantly. He opens their ears to instruction and commands that they return from iniquity. If they listen and serve him, they complete their days in prosperity and their years in pleasantness. But if they do not listen, they perish by the sword and die without knowledge. The godless in heart cherish anger. They do not cry for help when he binds them. They die in youth, and their life ends among the cult prostitutes. Now notice, he's talking about how people respond to a trial. He's not talking about did they live a bad life or a good life prior to that. It's how they're responding to the trial. So then verse 15, we're going through verse 14. We'll leave it right there. So when you look at the question, what does Elihu say God is doing for the righteous during these times of affliction?
He hears them and delivers them.
Okay. He does hear and deliver. True. Eventually that takes place. Something has to happen before that, though, that he's asking to do. Say again?
He makes and so they repent of their evil.
Yeah, so the trial, the affliction is doing what? Trying to get them to learn. It's a teaching moment for them. He's going to actually mention them, God as a teacher later on in the text. So this is a teaching moment. God is trying to declare to them His work and declare to them their work and their transgressions and the fact that they could be behaving arrogantly. How would an innocent person like Job be behaving arrogantly?
We've already mentioned it. He said, "Come here, God, I want to talk to you."
Okay, snap, snap, plus, I don't deserve this. I don't deserve this. Says who, Job? You know, this should strike us very, very deeply. When we began the book of Job, God Himself proclaims, have you seen anybody like Him on all the face of the earth? He is, if you said, who's the top guy in the whole world, the best guy, the best human being anywhere, it's Job. Did that mean Job had no spiritual needs? Did that mean Job could not or did not need to grow? No, no, and no. What a great warning to us. None of us, I'm sure, would say, yeah, I think I'm about on Job's level. Oh my, no, no, no. And yet, yes, we need this. And so Elihu is saying, this is what God is doing. He's opening your eyes. He's opening your ears. He's trying to get you to see arrogance. And any of us, arrogance is simply me saying, I don't think this should happen to me. I don't think I should have to go through this. This is wrong. This is not justice. We all suffer injustice.
Well, I mean, Christ suffered, and we're told that He learned through His suffering.
Yeah, good.
And yet He was perfect. So you got to be a pretty rich position if your point of view as well.
Yes.
Not only am I perfect, like Christ was, I don't need to learn.
I don't need to learn anything.
Christ had to learn something.
Yes.
So,
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So he's really, as I said, this is the most dangerous thing we go through in a trial. So this is the beauty of studying the book of Job, is he's teaching us very, very strongly, how am I going to handle when I am just beside myself, when I'm at the lowest point? How am I going to handle this? How am I going to handle the pain, the suffering, the mental anguish? What am I going to do with all of that? And he's really showing us here that arrogance means that I'm going to fight it instead of acquiesce to God's, whatever this is going to take. We want to ring the bell and say, school's out, God, I've learned my lesson, okay, it's enough, I got it, now you can take it all away. And God's up there going, I will tell you when class is out, and class isn't out yet, because you have not given up your life completely to me. And you haven't said in your heart and to me directly that whatever you want to do with me, God, is okay with me. That's a hard thing to say. It's a hard thing to say, okay, not my life. We think we say it, but we don't say it. Not my life. Whatever you want to do, whatever you want to take away, whatever you want to put me through is none of my business. I was bought with a price, and He owns me. That's a tough one to get to. But you don't get to it by just reading the Bible.
You don't get to it going through good times.
And you don't get to it going through good times. You only get to it when it's really, really, really bad. Not somewhat bad, not a little bit bad, really bad. That's where it comes. So tremendous lessons that he's teaching us here. Okay? Verse 15. Notice, how does God deliver the afflicted? How does he say he delivers the afflicted? By their affliction. What a statement. That's a great one. He delivers them by their affliction. And see, Job is like, what's he afflicted me? Why is he doing this? He's delivering you. And that follows up then in verse 16 as well. He also allured you, or it can be translated CSB, lured you, out of distress into a broad place where there was no cramping, and what was set on your table was full of fatness. But you are full of judgment on the wicked, and judgment and justice seize you. So, in other words here, you're not understanding what God has done for you. Basically, by putting you through the trial, he's saving you from something much greater and much worse later on. He's trying to bring you to a greater level that you need to come to, that you have not arrived. And you don't realize it until the whole machine breaks down and you realize you got to rebuild it. and so that's the idea. He's actually blessed you by taking you through a trial. What does Paul say when you have tribulations? They say to do? Rejoice. What's James say to do? Rejoice. Why in the world would I rejoice over that pain? Because God is saving you. What does the Hebrew writer say in chapter 12? He says this is without chastisement, God doesn't love you. If there's no chastisement, God's not your father. A father disciplines his child. And so you need to take and accept the chastisement. As the Hebrew writer says, no fun at the beginning, but afterwards it produces the peaceable fruit of righteousness. These are tough lessons. We read it theoretically. You will not grasp it in its true depth until you experience it. And he said that earlier in chapter 35, where he just told us that God has to bring you through this in order to teach you. That's one of the ways that you're taught, not just by the words of God. Okay? So really important little text there. By the way, before we I want to show you the other translations. Verse 18 is a tough one, and everybody writes about it and says, who knows what he's saying? So he says, beware lest wrath by the way, didn't mention, verse 17, when he says, you are full of judgment on the wicked, judgment and justice seize you. In other words, you evaluate God like a wicked person would. And you are also concerned so much about God's judgment and justice and why is he doing this, and I need to have an answer to this and all that. And you're just so overwhelmed with God's justice and judgment, and why doesn't he do it right? Yo, Job, cierra su boca. You need to keep it down. You don't have a right to say that to God. It's just like hearing a kid talk back to his parents, and you go, whoa, 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 whoa. You don't have a right to speak to your parents that way. Let's not do that. All right? So there's two translations that are helpful, I think, with verse 18, where he says, beware lest wrath entice you into scoffing, and let not the greatness of the ransom turn you aside. New King James, because there is wrath. I misspelled there on that one. Beware lest he take you away with one blow, for a large ransom would not help you avoid it. That seems helpful there. Or ASV, for let not wrath stir you up against chastisement, neither let the greatness of the ransom turn you aside. In that case, the ransom may be the need for your repentance, need for you to pay your debt against God, so to speak, and don't let the greatness of that turn you aside. But mostly here, don't turn to anger because of the chastisement you're experiencing. Do we get angry when we are going through unjust times and situations? And yes, we don't just get angry, we get livid. We're like, Especially if we're being abused by somebody else, as Job was being abused this whole time by these friends. I mean, goodness, how much different might the trial have been if the friends had actually had some compassion and maybe helped him and stuff, but no, none of that. He doesn't get anything. So there's a lot there that we can relate to very, very strongly. So be careful with how you respond to the pain in the trial. Very, very difficult. That's why people speak of PTSD. Okay? That comes out of that, all right? And then 18 through 25 here is Elihu's warnings concerning Job's behavior. So let's spot a number of the warnings here. Excuse me just a second. Didn't know how long that voice would last today, so didn't do too badly. All right. So verse 19, he says, "Will your cry for help avail to keep you from distress, or all the force of your strength?" In other words, you scream and holler and complain and all of this, is it stopping it? Is it changing it? No. So you're wasting your breath, Job. You need to acquiesce to God. Verse 20, "Do not long for the night when peoples vanish in their place." What was Job longing for? Death, exactly. He says, don't do that. That's cheating. God is trying to teach you. He's bringing you where He believes you should be to prepare you to be with Him forever. You do not have a right to say, I want out, I want to die. That's not the right way to respond to a trial. Wow, okay? Really bad trials. Don't be surprised if those thoughts cross your mind. That's just true. Verse 21, "Take care, do not turn to iniquity, for this you have chosen rather than affliction." You've chosen to sin in how you respond to the trial. He's not accusing him of sinning and causing the trial. That's what the friends did. He's accusing him of not responding to the trial correctly and therefore sinning. That's the greatest sin we commit when we are in a deep trial. We begin to demand that things change, that this ought not be, and even if we don't point right to God and say, why don't you do something, that's basically what we're saying. We don't dare say, you God, but we're complaining. And God says, I didn't ask you to complain. Don't. Just stop it. The wilderness wanderings for Israel was great trials in many ways. And He whacked them when they complained. Don't complain. I want to hear complaints. Yes, it's tough. But don't do this murmuring and complaining where you are challenging and saying, I shouldn't have to go through this. So He's warning him about that behavior. Verse 22. "Behold, God is exalted in His power. Who is a teacher like Him? Who has prescribed for Him His way? And who can say, you have done wrong?" Job implied that, if not just directly said it. He says, God's a great teacher. There's nobody who can teach like Him. Let Him teach you. Learn from Him. You know, I tell you what, just giving you firsthand experience, your whole being will change when you go to God in prayer and say, help me learn from you. Thank you for bringing me through these times so that I can know you more deeply, so that I can learn to love you more and trust you more. Big load can come off your shoulders when you turn and say, I'm ready to learn from you. A lot of difference there, okay? Verse 24. "Remember to extol His work of which men have sung." Has Job extolled the work of God in this? Absolutely not. He says, you need to remember to extol his work. Whatever it is, extol his work. God's above everything. Men have sung about it. You need to do that. All mankind has looked on it. Man beholds it from afar. I mean, it's so amazing. You can only just see it from afar, this great work of God. But he is great. And now, watch what happens. Verse 26, behold, God is great, and we know him not. The number of his years is unsearchable. For he draws up the drops of water, they distill his mist in rain. All right, now stop right there. I want you to picture this. This is the amazing part of this text. All right, you're out there in the wilderness with Job. A storm begins to rise. You're listening to the words of Elihu. And as Elihu begins to talk about the greatness of God, he looks out in the distance. I imagine it may be better if you've never lived in the West. It would be harder to imagine. But when you're in the West, you can see 1,000,000 miles. And so here, all of a sudden, he looks out and he begins to see those clouds get dark and rise up. And he begins to see the rain beginning to form. Now, be there, be Elihu, listen to the description. Verse 27, for he draws up the drops of water, they distill his mist in rain, which the skies pour down and drop on mankind abundantly. Can anyone understand the spreading of the clouds, the thundering of his pavilion? Behold, he scatters his lightning about him and covers the roots of the sea. For by these he judges peoples. He gives food in abundance. He covers his hands with lightning and commands it to strike the mark. Its crashing declares his presence. The cattle also declare that he rises. At this also my heart trembles and leaps out of its place. Hear the thunder? Do you hear it? Boom! Keep listening to the thunder of his voice and the rumbling that comes from his mouth. Under the whole heaven he lets it go, his lightning to the corners of the earth. After it his voice roars. He thunders with his majestic voice. He does not restrain the lightnings when his voice is heard. God thunders wondrously with his voice. He does great things that we cannot comprehend. For to the snow he says, fall on the earth, likewise to the downpour, his mighty downpour. He seals up the hand of every man, that all men whom he made may know it. Then the beasts go into their lairs and remain in their dens. From his chamber comes the whirlwind and the cold from scattering winds. By the breath of God, ice is given, and the broad waters are frozen fast. He loads the thick cloud with moisture. The clouds scatter his lightning. They turn around and around in his guidance to accomplish all that he commands them on the face of the habitable world. Whether for correction, or for his land, or for love, he causes it to happen. Oh, man. That's just, we just had some really fantastic thunderstorms just in the last few days. And when you listen to that and you see the lightning just going everywhere, it is so majestic. But how many times do we think that way? I remember when Brent was 9 years old and we were in California, and it was very, very unusual. We never got lightning there. You don't get lightning there. You don't have those big storms and all that. But we had a storm that came up from Baja, and it collided with a cool front, and we had lightning. And Brent and I, foolishly, probably sitting out on the front porch, had a little cover. But we didn't know. You're a Californian. We're too dumb to know that lightning can actually kill you. We're sitting out there, and man, that thing hit, and I mean, it lit the sky up, and the thunder rocked the house. And Brent just came unglued. He's so scared. And I said, it's okay. I want you to listen. It's the voice of God. It's the voice of God. Listen to it. Didn't work. He said, what's he so mad about? What's he so mad about? I said, he's not bad. He's just telling you how great he is. That's just so moving to see Elihu do that. Now, when you look at the details here, you see what Elihu is doing. Is God present in the storm? Yes. God's in the storm. His voice is there. He's letting everybody know He is there. He controls everything. Verse 7, He seals up the hand of every man. In other words, when He brings this storm, everything stops. Anybody running out to plow the field? Anybody running out to do anything? No, you're not running out to anything. God stops the world and says, I'm here. Listen to me. My voice, listen to me. And His voice roars. How many times He say that? You notice that? All the way through. His voice is roaring. Back in chapter 36 and verse 31. For by these He judges people, He gives food in abundance. He may deliver the storm to judge people. He may deliver the storm to provide abundance. Verse 13 of chapter 37. Whether for correction or for His land or for love, He causes to happen. Maybe the storm is to help correct us. Maybe the storm is to give us abundance. Maybe the storm is to show His steadfast love. On down in verse 20, he goes on. Well, let me read down there to verse 20. Verse 14. Hear this, O Job. Stop and consider the wondrous works of God. Do you know how God lays His command upon them and causes the lightning of His cloud to shine? This sounds very godlike, that way God's going to handle the next section. Do you know the balancing of the clouds, the wondrous works of Him who is perfect in knowledge? You whose garments are hot when the earth is still because of the south wind, can you, like Him, spread out the skies hard as cast metal mirror? Teach us what we shall say to Him. We cannot draw up our case because of darkness. We're too plain. It's too dark to be able to draw up a case against God. You cannot do that. Verse 20, shall it be told Him that I would speak? Did a man ever wish that he would be swallowed up? In other words, would you really honestly send an angel to tell God, hey, I've been waiting for you and I need an audience. Why aren't you coming? He says, you might as well ask Him to swallow you up, to just destroy you. Whew. Strong words. Verse 21, and now no one looks on the light when it is bright in the skies, when the wind has passed and cleared them. Now, some of the other translations are a little easier to understand here. In New American Standard Version, now people, now meaning during this storm, people do not see the light when it is bright in the sky. In other words, when the storm is going on, can anybody see the sun? No. If you didn't, know enough about it, you would not know the sun was out. But the sun's still there. And the indication is, in spite of the storm, God's still there. God is still above it. God is in the midst of the storm that you're going through. God is there. He's never turning His face from you. He's never turning His sight from you. He's never taking His eyes off you. And He's mighty and understanding. Beautiful, beautiful words. Verse 22, out of the north comes golden splendor. Everybody talks about, what does that mean? Maybe what do you call that? The borealis, blah, blah, blah. I never can say that fancy term there, but you know, the stuff in the sky. All right? And he says, God is clothed with awesome majesty. The Almighty, we cannot find him. He is great in power. Justice and abundant righteousness he will not violate. Job has said he's violated it. He's not been just with me, etc. And Elihu says he has not and will never violate that. Good words. Verse 24. Therefore men fear him. He does not regard any who are wise in their own conceit. And at that moment, God speaks out of the whirlwind. Chapter 38. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said. And that sets us up for the next lesson. Isn't that exciting? Whew. I just love it. I love, I first learned Elihu's speech when I was going through my first major trial. And wow, did I fall in love with that man. He was so helpful, and I studied his speech practically alone for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and go back over it and back over it. It was such a comfort, and you just have to love Elihu for what he's done there. Hey, any closing comments about anybody? Anything you want to add to that? All right. Very, very good. Enjoyed our time together, and Lord willing, next week, next Sunday night, we will look at God's speech. Woohoo! And when God gives a speech, he always has a perfect one. He has no flaws in his speech. So that'd be great. All right, we're going to sing a song right now. If we can help you in any way towards your spiritual journey, we'd be glad to do so. Please let us know. While together we stand and while we sing.